All right, welcome back to Off the Tap. This week is episode 48, and we're doing Wiseacre Brewing Company's Tiny Bomb.
Whoop whoop, two out from that big 50. Y'all know it's going to be the landmark cast.
Yes, sir, it is. This is based out of Memphis, Tennessee. Um, a an American Pilsner brewed with the in a ten. I don't know how to word this. Brewed the style of Bohemian and Czech. There we go.
Yeah. The,
There we
the
go.
well, I mean, Bohemia refers to anything Czech, I believe. So it's the Czech style, but the
Okay.
Bohemian style.
Czech style
Um,
Pilsner though.
Before even cracking it, I'm gonna be super pumped because not only A, is it a Pilsner, and you guys know the history of me and Pilsners, but secondly, if it's truly of the Bohemia or Czech style, I'm really pumped up. I think the only thing that makes it American maybe is the fact that it's made on this soil as opposed to over there.
I, I guess beats me, man. I have no idea. We're coming in at a 4.5. Is what it says online, anyways.
Got it on
And
the can. Confirmed on the can, 4.5.
confirmed. We're solid there. Okay, and 39 IBUs. Pretty good.
Ooh, yeah, so it's got a few more than the Lucky 19. Um, it's funny because remember how when we first started out with the ABUs, you were like, dude, they're terrible. They're not even close. We've been killing like they've been spot on the past like five.
Yeah, they
So maybe
have.
maybe it was an anomaly that we were like way out in left field with the first couple of ones.
Yeah, maybe my brain was just used to it by that point. I don't know. Uh,
Also, not to jump into branding yet because I did pop and I'm gonna pour, but the can itself, dude, it reminds me of what's that app that was like super popular, where you're the guy and you're running from like
Temple
Tomb
Run.
Run, Temple Run. Yeah, it's got Temple Run font
That
on
does
it.
have that. That is what it kind of looks like, man. That's a good point,
I was so confused.
man.
Ooh,
Yeah.
good Lord. She pours phenomenal. Crystal clear. This is, I mean, nice head. It's got a little bit of, I'm gonna say soot. That's not the proper terminology. Way less than the salt and lime.
Yeah, there was a lot of floaties in there.
But yeah,
Oh yeah.
a little bit of soot. It's pretty. It's very pilsnery looking. I haven't tasted it yet because I gotta let the head settle.
Oh yeah, it does. You can talk about the branding a little bit. I think on the can here and on the logo, it's a hops bomb. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think that's what the bomb looks like.
A hops bomb?
Yeah, it looks like a hops.
Oh, it's kind of like a hop, but a little less. I mean, maybe so. It's too temple runny. I can't get that out of my mind. It looks
Just
like
just thinking about running through South America at this point.
bro, it looks like the beta version. Like this is what the beta version of Temple Run was. And then they were like, "Ah, shit, we can't go with that. We gotta spice it up if people are gonna pay 99 cents for it." So they sold that rest of the branding to Wiseacre.
Yeah, or the guy that did the beta for Temple Run just works there.
Could be. Maybe Wiseacre's just a side gig, or I guess maybe Temple Run's a side gig. I don't know which one's more fruitful at this point, but
I'm gonna be honest with you. I mean, I don't know how well Wiseacre's doing for themselves, but I'm almost confident Temple Run made more money than most breweries in America.
in fact, it's installed on so many devices that people thought it was a YouTube scenario, like when Apple just put that on everybody's shit.
Yeah.
They were like, "Are you upgrading and you want Apple Notes? Well, you're also getting Temple Run, bad boy."
Yeah. Buckle down and start running.
Yep.
Get your thumbs swiping. Let's do this.
As if you didn't have enough anxiety, let's add this to your plate.
All right, I'm gonna taste it and see what it's all about. Mm.
Okay, so
It's a little hoppier than I imagine a pilsner. That's for sure.
ye- yep, and it's not that I don't dislike it, but um, it's not that I dislike it, excuse me, but I don't get American or Pilsner at all.
Yeah, I don't really taste much pilsner. It does. Yeah, it says here that it's pilsner malt and is spiked with 50 pounds of local wildflower honey. I do taste a little bit of the honey.
It is a little sweet, but to me, it tastes uh, like okay, so for instance, I don't know if you've ever filled like a deer feeder it doesn't have to be that, just corn in a sack. When you pour it, inherently you inhale some of the dust off of that sack of corn.
Yeah, sack
That's
dust.
what I yes. Just a little sack dust is what it tastes like. If you clip that out of context, that's going to be rough. But yes, it to me it tastes like sack dust. But I enjoy
Okay.
it. It does tickle the palate. There is a desirable taste there. I like sack dust, just
Yeah.
maybe not so much in a beer.
Yeah, I agree. It tastes great. I mean, I like it. So, the few sips I've had, I like it, but it's definitely not pilsnery to me. So I don't
No,
know what's going
it's
on
also
there.
very discreet, very passive, in my opinion.
I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
flavor
Like,
wise.
yeah, I mean, it's not. I don't taste it and go, it's watery or anything like that. I believe that there's like something to it, but um, it's mild, if you will, across the board, in my opinion. Doesn't have too
Yeah.
much of a hoppy bite. It doesn't have too much bitterness to it, like in a good way. I'm like disappointed, but not, if that makes sense.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Um, I did just burp, and I don't think it was beer induced yet. I had dinner, I mean, a little bit ago, but I think my stomach's still settling a little bit. But I did burp, and I did taste the hops on the burp. So there's that. But we'll see how that goes further down the road here as well.
I wonder if the Czech Republic's putting out like a checklist, uh, pun
Okay.
intended, for what makes it the Bohemian style or Bohemia style.
Mm.
Because as you enlightened me, even though I am a fan of the Pilsners, apparently that style comes from the soft waters of Pilsen, right? Which kind of
Hmm.
created the methodology for brewing Pilsners of the Bohemia foundation. So I wonder if like there is like I'd like to know what makes it truly Bohemia style if this is the product we're getting in an American Pilsner versus what historically I've tasted of true Czech Pilsners.
Hmm. I don't know. It does say here as well that the waters in what is this place? The artisan wells in Memphis are perfect to create their own version. Of
Hmm.
course, I'm sure a lot of people say that, but
I
that's what they
mean,
claim on there.
I don't know necessarily again, I don't know necessarily about what attributes or characteristics the water is imparting on this particular beer. But like I have to believe that water has a huge impact on like think about pizza. There's always this big
Ooh.
debate like New York, Chicago, two different style pizzas, but like New York pizza cannot be replicated because of the water that goes into the crusts and stuff. And I do believe that. Like I'm not saying that like it's shit water that's creating this delicious pizza because that might be the case, but the variability in water I think
Well,
does change the final product.
I mean,
That might be the
I
case.
don't think you're far off from assuming that.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm not. What I'm saying is I'm not gonna be like, oh, you need terrible like water to make good pizza because it might be good water. I don't know. I'm just saying like, I think it
I don't know.
does
You need New
impart a
York
lot of.
water.
Yeah, I mean, it's not probably as fresh as what's coming out of Memphis. Just if I was a betting man, if I was ballparking.
Yeah, I would think so. There's too many people there, man. I'm sure the waters in Houston aren't that great either.
No, well, especially not of now. This is way off topic, and we're not going to spend any time on it. But they're shipping all that trash from Ohio here to get treated. I don't know if you saw that,
Mm,
if you've been following that, but
I did
they
not,
they
but that
basically
sounds interesting.
I think basically they were just like, who on this earth has dealt with probably terrible environmental issues and covered them up entirely throughout the entire thing? And they were like, oh, H Town. We'll send it to some cats down there. They'll have this cleaned up. We're like the mafia for like environmental releases.
Environmental cover ups and shit down here in
Yeah.
H Town. That's what we're known for.
Yeah, who can rid this world of 70 miles of boxcars of contaminated liquid like that? H Town, son. We know some folks.
We know some kind of things down here. So yeah, this is from Memphis, Tennessee. I originally thought that it said Nashville, so this is on me, but I wanted to kind of try to correlate this and talk a little bit about how country music has just kind of gone off the rails, and it's just not the same anymore. We don't really
It's
have much real country anymore. It's a lot of pop country going on these days, and I'm just not about
I think you mispronounced "went to shit." I think a little
it.
bit. That's what you were trying. Like you mispronounced it. It's just wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. I think.
Yeah. It's
But
something like
gone
that.
to shit. Here's the thing. Terrible. I don't really follow much of it. I understand how people could like it, but to me, it's pop. Um, this is gonna take me down a whole different rabbit hole, but it's like a lot of pop rap, which is considered country music now. Here's the thing: if you like it, you like it. I don't consider it country music, and therefore I just don't necessarily follow it because I'm not like a huge pop lover or a huge R&B lover or something like that. If that was the genre that I preferred, I dabble here and there. But if that was like my preferred genre, then I probably would love a lot of it, but it's not. To that point, like I think a lot of what was going on in like the 70s and 80s, if you think about like true country and western music, like some of the classics that we love that are from the 70s and 80s were also a little progressive and maybe the pop country of that era. So I can't, as much as I want to judge for it being shit, crap music, probably 10, 15 years from now, I'm going to go, that was just the thing they were going through. And like that was a phase of country. Everybody goes has phases. It was a phase of country music. I'm not going to like it. Hopefully we'll come back around to what's, traditional. But there's stuff that I like from the 70s and 80s that I think was probably a little progressive and out there that is the equivalent of what's going on today.
Yeah, it probably was. I think I'm on the same stance as you with that. Is like it's not necessarily that I hate it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't really listen to a lot of like modern pop country artists in general. But every now and then when someone like puts a song on, I don't like hate it. You know what I mean? It's just not what I'm into. And you said it. I just don't consider it country. That's the thing. Is like
Yeah.
it's not. We need to stop calling it country music because just because the stories are talking about the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's the same genre of music. It's got to be based on the style of instruments and whatnot being how they're being played and whatnot.
And you know what? I find myself periodically listening, not necessarily to the lyrics all that much, but I'll find myself listening to something and go, hey, I kind of like this. Like if this could run in the background, that's awesome. I don't think of it as like, oh, that's a cool country hit to like be the background of my life. I'm just like, that's a good groove and I like it. 9 times out of 10, that's because it doesn't fit the country model, like because I like other music too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, one other thing I was going to mention, which you know how we always say, oh, we could have a whole separate side conversation on that, or we could have a whole separate episode on that. I truly believe we could have a whole separate podcast dedicated to this, but like like forever. But I was explaining to someone like the even what we like as Texas country or red dirt music or like the Americana, if you will, genre. Like that's not technically country music; it's its own separate genre, but in and itself is rooted more in country and western swing and bluegrass and traditional country roots than the stuff that we're hearing on the radio. Um, but I had a whole conversation with someone recently about like the build out of Texas country music and the Oklahoma, red dirt and just that movement and where it started and who built it up and like the key players then and the key players now. And all throughout that whole time, I was like, none of them remotely relate to what's going on in Nashville right now.
No, not at all. Not
Yeah.
even close. It's very defeating for me because country music isn't my favorite style of music. It never really has been my favorite, but I always enjoyed it, right? And like even I mean, like you're saying, like George Strait, right? Obviously, everybody loves some good George, but like even the people like Brooks and Dunn and those, like they were all country music, but they were pretty progressive country music
Yeah.
still. But that's my definition of country, and I guess it is just kind of what you grow up with. But still, it's not like the way it's trending now. It's not the same. It's like the same way I feel about I don't know, from like 2015 until like 2020. It felt like all rap music was that mumble rap
Yeah.
stuff where people were like the whole time. I'm like, dude, what are you saying? I want to know what you're saying. you know.
What
And
what was
it wasn't my thing. Like just because the beat's good, like I don't, I'm more, I like to listen to songs rather than hear them. You know what I mean? And like I want to be able to understand everything, and I want it to be true to what, you know, what country music is or what rap music is and stuff like that.
2 points I'll make. One, I on that front, I want to be most of the songs that or I guess music, not songs, but most of the music that I truly enjoy is I'm like caught off guard listening by like the way that not necessarily the music itself, like sometimes yes, like the arrangement and the time scales and stuff like that, but like I'm taken by surprise at like the way that it's written. If I genuinely get surprised by the way that lyrics come out, then I go, "Oh shit, like I will remember that and then I will enjoy." The
Mm,
problem I think with a lot of country music now is that you know exactly what's going to come out of their mouth 45 seconds to a minute before it does, right? There's no, they don't let you kind of read between the lines and be shocked by how the story is told. And so that's the fault of it. But on that note, because you kind of brought up a good point, like we're obviously shitting on current country music. Um, but I bet you every genre has these hiccups, right? I'm sure hip hop, there's a period of like true devoted hip hop, like, lay fans like us, but then like true like critics that are going, oh yeah, that stretch between, '04 and '07 was terrible. There was a revolution that was going on that thankfully failed. You know what I mean? I'm sure that you
mm-hmm.
could do that with rock, you could do that with progressive, you could do it with everything. So let's just all cross our fingers, pat each other on the back, hold each other's hands, and hope to God that we make it through this slump of terrible country music that we're in.
And get through
It
the
can't last
pop
forever.
countries, the slump. Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree. They just got the yips right now. They just can't hit. You know what I mean? They just can't
that's
get it
it.
going. That's all it is. I mean, to be fair, I think alternative rock kind of went through that phase from like 2014 until 2018 almost. Maybe a couple years longer because they went from like the hard, not like hard rock, but you know like the basic rock elements of like solid guitar, drums, and bass, right? And they went to like the technological sounds and stuff, the technology sounds. And I'm just like, man, oh yeah, that's not it. That's not it.
And
Just
there
stick to what's good, man.
And there's some like long-term artists that had, just because they lasted forever. I know we're way off topic, but just because they lasted through so many iterations of the genre that they were tied to, they themselves explored and failed along the way. They were like, hey, what
Mm.
everybody's wanting is EDM, right? So imagine now, like AC/DC's like, hey, EDM, it's in. We need to EDM our shit up, and then they try it and they're like, oh, that was terrible, and so they go back to what their roots are, and that's what I hope that country music does is they
Mm.
realize like, hey, we're so far off, it's no longer enjoyable or there's no longer a demand for it. Let's get back to the basics, let's simplify things of that nature, you know what I mean?
Yeah, get back to the roots. Let's.
Yeah.
I don't even care if you go back to like George Jones roots, man. Just let's get back there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I mean
solid root.
that's honestly one of the ones I prefer, but you know, my point stands.
And I would say that's before a lot of the progressive folks started stepping in. Maybe later in his career, I guarantee you he was around long enough to have a couple of progressive failures where they were like, "George, you got to do this." And he set the bottle of whiskey down long enough to like pump out a pop hit, and they were like, "Ah, okay, not so much. We'll
Never
put that on the
mind.
B side, move on."
Yeah, probably. I mean, it is, you know, all music really stems from the same thing, anyways. I think we talked about that a little bit in a previous episode, but it all stems from like that blues stuff, anyways. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So there's a family tree involved in music, anyways. All goes back to the same parents, and you know, we're gonna mix it up a little bit, I guess.
I would say that these generation, like I will stand behind this as offensive as this is. Like I hope these generations of the tree get excluded the next time that they update the entire tree. I'll say that
Yeah.
much.
When the
You know what I
next time
mean?
there's a family reunion, they're
Yeah.
not invited.
There's somebody whoever's responsible for that part of the phone tree, letting them know, hey, you guys should show up, just doesn't fucking place the call. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Those are the second cousins 3 times removed, you know, by marriage.
It's also sad too, because like I'm sure that not all of them are trash. Like there's probably a couple of them that are in there that just because we assimilate them with this particular group, we don't even explore their music. So
Oh yeah,
hmm.
I mean, again, like I said, when I hear it, I don't hate it. It's just like I'm not adding it to my music library because it's not what I necessarily choose to listen to all the time. That's all it's really
speaking
about.
speaking of a mix of artists, genres, and every iteration actually, I would say it's probably a great representation of all of the different iterations of country music and beyond. The rodeo obviously is in town. And I think we're maybe this is the last week, so we've been rocking it for like I think there's 19 or 20 shows or something like that.
Yeah, we missed the mark on talking about the rodeo by a couple weeks. So we're like at the end of it now. I think there's
Hey,
there's
there's
like a
never
week
a
left.
there's never a wrong time. You could always do a recap afterwards, but so it's crazy because the names they do pull in are all across the board, right? So
Yeah.
Brooks and Dunn you mentioned, right? That was kind of the progressive pop kind of the early 90s, mid 90s. But like they were there. I mean, Machine Gun Kelly played
Mm.
it. I don't know if
Which
he's
what
still in
even
the
is he anymore? I don't even know what music he makes anymore at this point.
terrible. I don't know if that's a genre, but he's killing it. If that's the case.
People like him. People like his music.
Ah, man. I would probably enjoy an entire album and or jukebox if that still is a thing that exists, full of like show tunes and infomercial background music as opposed to listening to a 30-second interview of Machine Gun Kelly where his music's played in the background. Um just personal preference. Everybody's got their thing, man. Look, I'm just laying down where I feel, right? You don't have to like it, you don't have to believe in it. That's just how it is.
All right, all opinions, all opinions.
But so along with this comes so like massive crowds every single night, massive the whole range, right?
They got
But it's
EDM at the
very
rodeo now, dude.
yeah, so they had EDM, they do the yeah, which is again, I think that's way more acceptable than Machine Gun Kelly and just as acceptable as any other pop country in my opinion. If you're booking listen, if you're booking some of the talent in country Nashville country music these days, then you should also be looking at EDM because it's all the same fucking pool of people, in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. But the weirdest part about it is explaining to the rest of the world that's not from Houston or Texas, I would say, but from Houston at least, just the sheer capacity and size of something like the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo.
Yeah, because a lot of people think rodeo and they just think like a little shindig at like a warehouse area,
Yeah,
on off like the side of some random road where people are just riding bulls and
yeah.
riding horses and stuff like that. But no, that's not what the Houston rodeo is like, man. Nobody understands, I don't think.
I would say if any, there might be obviously the people that are in the circuit, folks out of like Arizona, maybe Utah, anywhere there's a lot of cattle. I've also made this assumption, but anywhere there's a lot of cattle, there's a lot of rodeoers, not necessarily cowboys, because that goes without saying. But anywhere there's a lot of beef production, there is a bunch of or a huge rodeo talent pool. So like
Yeah,
Sao Paulo, right? In Sao Paulo, Brazil, massive for rodeo. But even Houston is epic compared to that, only because they raise like I think like half of the world's beef there or whatever.
yeah, that's
Um,
crazy.
but even explain, I mean, just to anybody, they're like, yeah, so there's a rodeo in town. Why can I not get a hotel, traffic, food, gasoline? Like, why are all of the resources in your city tied up? And I'm like, I don't know, because there's 570,000 people that now live close to downtown. Like,
Yeah,
if not way more. I mean, there's 100,000 people going a night to watch shitty pop country, Machine Gun Kelly, and EDM music. So, let alone the people that are dedicated to the actual craft of rodeo and livestock show.
yeah. What is because this new generation of the rodeo, though, like you said, is a lot of people go for the concerts, right? Which I mean, that's I mean, that's probably how it's been for a long time, but people go to see the concerts, and that's why they get such like a wide range of talent. You know what I mean? So they can have different people in and pull a full crowd every night instead of just getting the same country artists over and over again every year. You know what I mean? But there's still that true rodeo loving person that goes early enough to watch the whole rodeo. And then I'm sure there's some people that go and watch the rodeo and then leave because they
Well,
don't want to stay for the concert.
the other thing that I was explaining to people, they're like, "Oh, so it's a rodeo." Like, I mean, how long I'm like, "Well, first off, the livestock show starts before, right? Or the
Yeah.
actually the yeah, the livestock show starts before. And then like for like 2 weeks, and they're like, "How could they livestock?" I'm like, "Well, it's a lot of livestock, okay." Then
Yeah,
I'm
you don't
like,
understand.
yeah. Then it's the cook off, and they're like, "Good Lord, the cook off." I'm like, "You have the world's lead, like the best chicken thigh that's ever been cooked on the planet. Every man in the world, female in the world that's ever made it will be in Houston for 3 weeks doing it, right?" And I fill in
Yeah.
the blank there. It could be ribs, it could be brisket, it could be sauce, whatever.
Whatever kind of meat that you can cook in any kind of fashion
Dude,
will be there.
don't limit yourself, dude. Beans and pies, like there's a
Oh, yeah, yeah,
category for
yeah,
everything.
for sure.
Um,
I mean, it really is that like the sheer size of it. Like, NRG's a pretty. I mean, it's standard size stadium, maybe a little bit larger than average size football stadium, but that's not all of it. Like, there are warehouses across the freeway from NRG that are just filled with livestock. Like, there's so much, and they literally chain it off, and there's like security around it months in advance of all this happening.
we didn't necessarily confirm it, but it was a good point that was brought up halfway in joking, okay? But the way I understood it, I was told that NRG was not necessarily built for the Texans. It was built for the rodeo.
Yeah.
And the Texans happened to benefit from signing an agreement with NRG to have it as their home stadium. So that's one thing, which is mind blowing enough. Number two, again, we haven't tested this. This is anecdotal at best or word of mouth. There's no stats on this, but I would confirm it. If you look at the volume of revenue that's probably from the whole thing, not just the rodeo night per night and the talent that comes in, but if you look at like livestock show, cook off, all of the vendors, all the stuff in between, the period of time where the rodeo's in town, let's say it's a 50-day stretch, give or take, right?
Yeah.
January
It's
set up
almost 2 months.
to March breakdown. Um, the revenue that's generated there probably equates to a football season, if not double a football season, I would almost venture to say.
I would say Texans of recent years probably
Yeah.
more than a football season. I
Because
would think.
because I can't imagine if you think about it, there's only how many home games? Eight, nine, eight, seven,
What? 12, 7, 6, 5, 4. Uh
three and a
no, what?
half.
There's 17 games in a season now, so it's like 8 home games, 8 or 9 home
Okay.
games. I don't know how they divide it.
So if we go strictly food, alcohol sales, and merch, right?
For a 2 hour span, 2.5 hour span per game. When you're
Right.
talking about
Versus
rodeo, if you get there early enough, if the concert starts at 9, that means usually like the rodeo stuff is starting at 6.
yeah.
So you're there for 4.5, 5 hours.
Correct. And
The
I don't
whole
and they're packing the house and I can't
and
I
there's indoor stuff and outdoor stuff. So like there's people that go to the rodeo just to go to the outdoor area, not even inside of the stadium.
and I there's not a demographic that's going to the rodeo that's not consuming ounce per ounce the equivalent of what a Texans fan is, right?
Yeah, I would agree.
So they're always going to be slamming equivalent beers, probably food or plentiful food.
Plus, I would venture to say the people that are on the field during the rodeo are also drinking
Yes,
and consuming things,
that is
whereas the
correct.
football teams cannot do that.
That's right. So that being said, just like ounce per ounce, pound for pound, hour for hour, minute for minute, the rodeo is probably more profitable, even inside, because you're not packing it every single night, but neither are the Texans, right? I would say the lowest, uh, the lowest um, attended night at a rodeo is still 75, 80,000 people, you know?
Yeah,
So
yeah. for sure. I mean, we went. So when we went and we saw Turnpike, they got 75 themselves,
Yeah.
roughly 75. It was a little less, but rounded up 75,000, and that's just the people on the inside,
Yeah.
not
So
not the outdoor crowd.
if you put somebody in there like Brooks and Dunn that hasn't been back in Houston for 25 something years, I think it was like 125,000 people, right?
That's crazy,
So so I
absolutely
anyway,
ridiculous.
so just to put it in perspective for those that are not familiar with the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, it's gosh, it's so cliche to say it. Everything's bigger in Texas. Like this is a good example. This is probably one of the only examples, if I'm being true to being Texan. This is a key example of everything's bigger.
Is that not where the term came from? That saying came from? I thought that's what it came from.
I have no idea. We should look that up.
Because
That's worth the Google.
I think that's what like everybody was saying, like the rodeo's bigger in Texas. And that's when they started saying everything's bigger in Texas, even though definitely not. There's some large things outside of Texas,
Yeah.
like mountains.
Uh,
We don't have mountains here. Not a lot of them, anyways.
no. Or I was gonna say
Or
available water sources, but that's a California problem.
canyons.
Canyons,
Can't get bigger than the Grand Canyon, and that's not in Texas. So
snowstorms.
yeah,
Mm,
not really getting many large snowstorms. Now we get snowstorms that wipe us out, but they're not big.
no,
That's
no.
just due to our poor infrastructure down here in the South.
Listen, and the fact that we don't need to be prepared for that. Our resources should be otherwise.
Yeah, well, they just don't want to pay to have it. That's the problem.
Man, I don't know. I'm gonna have to run down the rabbit hole and get an answer to that later on. But maybe that is. We're gonna just pretend that that's where it originated because that's the best example I could think of.
Yeah, I really feel. I mean, maybe not. Maybe that's just like, one of the first times I heard it was like George Strait said it or something, and so that's why it's ingrained in my head that that's where the term came from or the phrase came from. I don't know though. Beats me,
Back
man.
to jumping around a good bit here, but back to a point you made earlier that I want to bring up. It does tie back to the tiny bomb. Not that I'm trying to bring it back around because I'm terrible, obviously, as everyone knows, is steering the ship in one particular fucking direction. But back to tiny bomb. So when you said it was finished with honey, it made me think of something. Or I guess there's honey that's infused in it or something. What was your wording on that?
Yeah, something about made with Pilsner malt and 50 pounds of local wildflower honey.
50 pounds of local wildflower honey. So
Here we go.
I
This
don't.
is a good line right here. Let me read this too. There are delicate aromas of sugar and clover wafting forth from this crisp, smooth pale lager. Okay, so this says pale lager, but it's listed
Yeah,
as a Pilsner. They're the same thing,
yeah. Well, a
just
lager
different
is a
style.
pilsner. It's just the
Okay.
style of lager.
And then it
Um,
says Shazam at the end. So don't know why, but it does.
Listen, I don't know what real estate agent dropouts that all of these freaking beer companies are hiring to write their freaking descriptions, but I don't need a quaint little fixer upper beautiful Shazam feel at the end of a description of a damn beverage. All right, I'm gonna step off of that box for a second. But anyways,
They just got to sell it, man. That's the marketing team.
I mean, but do they though? Like, I feel like most beers that made it sold themselves, and I might be lying a little bit on that, right? There's probably some phenomenal beers out there that nobody's buying, but I feel like if it's damn good. Okay. Also, what aside from us, who's reading the description online? Not nobody. They're buying the can because they're like, I like Temple Run, and then they're slamming a few of them and going, I
Like,
could do
man,
without the
you
crisp
know
water.
what? You know what? I broke my high score this time. I'm gonna go get me a tiny bomb to
Exactly.
celebrate.
But anyway, so the point that I was trying to make was, so if it's finished with a bunch of honey, like there's 50 pounds of honey, I'm glad that you said clover because I have a few buddies that raise honey in Texas, and they always are trying to get it to be wildflowery. But apparently, bees are inherently lazy. I get it; they're just trying to live. Apparently, diseases and humans are killing them. No
Yeah.
fault. But apparently clover's easy
Well,
to
and we
get
just
the sugar.
yoink their source of food, so that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And now we're even taking their wax, like we're making paraffins out of it and shit, like lotions and lip balms. Anyways,
Oh, the
um,
creams and lotions.
they are really good though.
They are. They're very nice.
But so they apparently they go after clovers because they're, we don't like clover. Clover's kind of a nuisance for us. We're cutting it down. And so they go after clover a lot. And he always would get very frustrated because that makes your honey like a smoky, clovery taste. And he'd be like, "Oh, I got more clover honey." And I'm like, "It tastes delicious to me." And he's like, "Yeah, but it's not wildflower." So when they mentioned that it was wildflower and clover, I was like, "Ha ha ha, their bees are just as lazy and they're using generic ass honey." But all that said to say this, it toes the line of being a mead, right? Because if they're giving the yeast or whatever's in their malt or wort or whatever something, sugars to feed off of, and it's honey based, it's kind of toeing the line of a mead, right?
Yeah, so I've never had a mead before. I've wanted to
We're,
try.
we're
Uh,
gonna fix we're gonna fix that, but
yeah, we need to fix it. I've always wanted to try one. I wanted to go to the Renaissance Festival this year and try one, but my God, it's always in our local area. It's always in like November, and the weather's just horrible, and it's muddy as hell.
yeah.
And one, I would probably get disowned and thrown out of the house if I came home with muddy tires on my wheelchair. And two, I don't want to go out there and get stuck or something, anyways. So.
Now, that's probably the number one thing that pushes me away from attending. Aside from the fact that it's like Comic-Con for weirder people,
Hey,
I,
yo, dude, come
it,
on, bro. What? Come on.
listen, it's a weird group. I mean, they're good people, but it's a weird group of
It's
people.
it's
And I'm not
medieval
talking about
Comic Con.
it's
That's
medieval
again,
Comic-Con.
dude. That
That's
should be their
perfect.
slogan. It should be their slogan.
Like Comic-Con, but medieval.
The medieval
But
times of Comic Con.
I'm like the people that go during the day and stuff, that's fine. But like the people that are camping there and shit, yeah, it's a little odd.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like they're like trying to recreate Woodstock in in a weird way.
Yeah, and it's always wet. So I feel you on that. But so mead is basically the way I'm gonna distill it to this. It's basically wine, but instead of fruit, you just you're put well, I guess they are fruit infused, but your source of sugar is honey.
Mm.
Okay. And so that's why in this case, like if they are infusing with a lot of honey, and that's truly a sugar source, not a flavorant, but truly a sugar source, it does kind of toe the line of being meaty. It tastes nothing like a mead. It doesn't have the consistency of a mead, but technically by definition, it might be right on the verge. An American Pilsner mead.
An American Pilsner Lager mead
A tiny bomb Temple Run American Pilsner lager mead
from
brewed
Memphis, Tennessee.
from Memphis, Tennessee, which is way too close to terrible music.
well, well, yeah, terrible by our definition, right?
That's true. Also, I'm gonna bail Wiseacre out. It is definitely something that you can enjoy a lot of.
Yes. Anything I wanted to say that too, and I'll touch on it again before we do our ratings later. But it's very enjoyable. Like I really do enjoy it, and I can see myself drinking a lot of them and buying it again. I mean, it is good.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah,
very good beer. Just
I'll
not
agree
what
with
I
that too.
expected. That's the only reason it threw me off.
I tell you this: if they would not have written anything on the can but Tiny Bomb, and we were just organically trying it, didn't have the Czech style, Bohemian style, American Pilsner, all of that written on the can, then I would have just taken it for face value and been like, "Fuck yeah, I'll recommend this to somebody and they could drink it again." But
Yeah.
all of the other things I think are what's throwing me off.
Yeah, that's all it is the expectations were different. Uh,
Yeah.
but it's not a bad bad taste or anything like that.
Nope. And I know we've talked about this 100 times, but its craftiness stays discreet enough right? You can tell it's crafty, but it's discreet enough to where if you had a person that was a non-craft drinker, they wouldn't be like, "Ugh, that's terrible. I can't do that." Right? And that's
Yeah.
the that's them keeping the hops in check.
Mhm.
Did it again. Anyways, it's
Oops.
them keeping the
Brittany would be proud.
she would be.
Brittany
That's them
would be
keeping
proud.
the hops in check. Anyway,
So, well, and this kind of relates back, I guess, a little bit, but there's not a lot of like mainstream mead that I have never seen any, at least.
I don't think so either. I mean, nobody's like running to the at least no, not that I'm aware. I mean, you're not there's not going to be like no, I've never heard anybody be like, yeah, it's like the Bud Light of mead. Like no. Um
So all
so
mead is pretty much craft.
I think so. I mean, there's probably mainstream meads, but they might not be called as such. Like also they're usually higher I believe in alcohol content. I think some
That
of them
makes
are like really high, like wine high, and then some of them are probably like, you know, they'll be above like IPAs and stuff like that. But yeah, I can't think of one like IPA. I mean, sorry, one mead that's like mainstream. Every time I've ever had it, it's been like Renaissance style or like a few breweries that I've made you aware of that do it.
Yeah, because I've never seen one in a store. So I was just gonna ask like, is are meads crafty, or are they kind of like their own? Because like a beer, you can tell, like we always talk about how
Yeah.
there's like a craftiness in it, but can you taste that in a mead, or is it like such its own thing that you can't?
No, I think some of them do kind of like gray the line of is this a beer? Is this a craft beer? Or, you know, and somebody's like, no, of course, no, it's a mead, and you're
No,
like,
you
oh,
mother.
yeah. Um, and I think some of them do have like they're some of them are out there and kind of unique enough to where you're like, oh, this is definitely crafty. But I've had a couple as of late that were even outside of the ones that I recently shared with you. Like I had someone I was in Colorado recently, and they were not crafty, but I knew they were a mead. You know what I
Hmm,
mean? Like, and I don't seek them out because they do have a tendency to be sweeter, just because of the way that they're processed, and I don't like sweet. We know this, so
right.
I kind of stay away from them unless they have like, you know, they basically leverage a lot of mead players now, kind of leverage the standard understandings of beers, how they brand their meads. It's still a mead, but they're like, oh, it's kind of like the IPA of a mead. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know exactly what that's going to taste like. Or they're like, oh, it's a kind of like an Irish red of a mead. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what that, or a wheat of a mead, right? So going in, you're like, oh, that's going to have, it's a wheat, right? It's going to be a full bodied, sweet, kind of bitter at the end kind of thing, right? So you just know that when you're having a mead. But I would say there's some that are super crafty, just like craft beers. And then there's a lot where you're like, I wouldn't know this isn't something I couldn't buy off the shelf, but in a good way, not like, you know, it's not like the Frio Light of mead or whatever.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I would imagine by alcohol content you could still taste the alcohol anyway, or maybe not taste it, but definitely get the buzz of it.
so I think that's the biggest scare to me is because I've had a couple of like full glass. I don't want to say like pints, but like, you know, maybe like a flight, like two flights I've done, whether those 4 ounce pours or 3 ounce pours or whatever. You do a couple of flights, and so that's the equivalent of like a pint, and you're like, oh, good God, I didn't taste any of that, and now I've got to stand up and walk out of here. So they have a tendency to creep up on me. Maybe it's the way my body processes them. I don't know.
Maybe I can imagine though. It's obviously, I mean, also because the sugar and I mean the honey in it probably masks a lot of that alcohol.
Yeah, and they also for again, I know the alcohol content's high, but they all seem. I've never had a mead where immediately you weren't hit with flavor, right? Like we talk about all the times you have a beer where you're like, oh, this is. You try to be nice, kind of like the realtors writing the freaking descriptions. This is very drinkable, right? It's very, you know,
Yeah,
calm, even keel, which
I
basically
feel
means
very hydrated right now.
yeah, like I'm blasted in the face with no flavor is basically what that means. I've never had that with a mead. Normally, it's full of flavor from start to finish. So maybe that's what is hiding the
Yeah,
alcohol. I don't know.
it's like when you see somebody, struggling in the heat, maybe they're working or something, you don't bring them a water. You take them a Bud Light.
Yeah. Well, and classically, you bring them a mead because they're thick. It's almost like the sustenance that they
Like
need to
food.
keep going.
That's why
When
the
they
Vikings
say
drank it.
Yeah, when they say beer built the pyramids, it was probably like mead.
It had to have been something more like that. Because
It
they
was
weren't they weren't making box, back there in the Egyptian times.
it was the alcoholic oats overnight of the pyramid time. That's what it was.
Yeah. I've never had oats overnight, but I've seen it.
Neither have
So
I, but
that's
like,
hilarious.
you mean slowly constituted oatmeal? Fuck, I'll get up 30 minutes early and nuke it. I don't know what you want.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
should have we should have included that one on the storm the beaches, right? Because
Well, hey, it's a tiny bomb.
yeah, it is.
It's a tiny bomb. Just get up earlier and nuke your oatmeal, man. You know, I
Good
uh,
lord.
I mean that's kind of the same. The oats overnight is kind of the same concept as like a cold brew coffee, right?
Yeah, but it's oatmeal.
Yeah. Do you get more nutrients out of it doing it that way or something?
Probably, but like the stress and anxiety of me prepping oatmeal 12 hours and 8 hours in advance, dude. Are you out of your
And
mind?
then needing a spot in the fridge to store it overnight?
Fuck, I'll drink 3 ounces of a mead and just be on about my business.
And probably get fired. But that's
Good
okay.
lord. Worth it as long as I don't have to admit that I made oats overnight. I don't know. It might
Yeah.
be a good product. Sorry, it's overnight. Later on, this is going to come up. You know how they always like go back and cancel people based on what they wrote on Twitter?
Yeah.
10 years from now, somebody oats at night when it's massive is going to be like, you son of a bitch, and just cancel us. Just take all of our content down.
Yeah. They're gonna take it all, everything. They're gonna come for us and be like, dude, you can't do anything anymore. They'd email us and be like, we were gonna offer you a sponsorship, but now
Yeah, well,
it's
you can
not.
take your sponsorship and throw it where I would throw your product.
Oh
Right
God.
in the old trash oats
Well,
overnight.
well, listen, I'll try anything once, but I
Unless it's
would.
oats overnight.
Okay. All
I'm
right, we got
sorry.
too deep there.
I'm
We got
sorry.
too
I'm
deep
sorry.
there. Okay.
But
So, do you think if they were to sell meads in the store like they do beers, that they would sell them in a tall boy? Or do you think it would
yeah,
be more of like a 12-ounce can?
no, I think they could sell them in a tall. Well, I mean, I think they could sell them in a tall boy because, like, a pint's not. First off, it's all about how the consumer controls themselves. Okay, so you could sell them in tall boys. You could sell wine in tall boys. You know how they have the canned wines now.
You're
Um,
talking about drinking a tall boy wine, bro?
I mean, it's like a couple of cups. It's like 3 cups of wine, right? Or 3 glasses of
Oh,
wine, maybe.
yeah, but in one, well, I guess wine you don't need cold anyways or whatever, but oh God.
Listen, man, like everybody's always like, "Oh my gosh, they had 2 glasses of." The majority of America opens a bottle and never has to close it. Okay, so you can do the math on that. But
Just slap in the bag, baby, slap in the bag.
well, I'm just saying, like, very few people are recorking a bottle of wine. They're just going, "Hey, we're gonna power through. I'm just gonna do my. I don't want this to spoil, right? It's not like leftovers, and they just kill the whole thing." Um, But I would say that yeah, mead could be in a tall boy easily. It's not as potent as you would think. Like some of them are, but it's very drinkable otherwise. I don't think it would be inappropriate for it to be a tall boy.
But you think we would have to call it something else instead of just like a tall boy?
Well, I mean, oh, like a craft hand keg.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yes.
this is the point. I'm glad that you set that up because and by the way, for everyone listening, I've pitched this before and it fell on deaf ears. He basically had the same response to a craft hand keg that I have to oats overnight. So you guys can do the fucking math, all
Okay,
right?
this is a lie. I'm being slandered right now. This is
No, no,
not.
no.
I did not have
This is
that. I did
exactly
not say to take your craft hand keg and throw it in the garbage.
Listen, so my MO, okay, not necessarily with mead, but with any good quality craft beer, okay? If you, for instance, we mentioned the rodeo, we mentioned football games, right? When you go there, I think a lot of people, or at least craft brewers, are adverse to selling their beers in a tall boy. And not a tall boy, I'm talking like a 25 ouncer or
Yeah.
24 ouncer. You're only getting like Bush or Frio in a 25, okay? Because
Yeah.
they're like, hey, we'll give them that extra
Mm,
overfill ounce.
yeah. We'll give
But
them
a
that
24
extra
ounce,
ounce overnight.
fuck, fucking trash brand. Anyway, so 24 ounces. And that's what you're getting in like, Michelob's, you're getting that in Miller Lights. But I think that craft brewers are scared to go, and I know that there's a cost associated, but they're scared to go to that 24-ounce can because of the negative image that the can produces for the
Right.
product.
It's the brown
But it
bag gas station image.
exactly. So I understand why they're like, oh, we respect our beverage enough to not put it in that. By the way, there's probably a bunch of craft brew listeners that would be like, dude, we don't give a shit what we sell it in. We just need to sell more of it.
As long as it sells.
Which is why I prescribe to you and offer you guys this. We need to promote what I'm calling craft beer hand kegs, and it's essentially the same exact 24-ounce can, but it looks like a keg as far as the printing is concerned, and there's just a stamp on the can that's burned into it like it would be burned into the barrel, but it says Wiseacre Tiny Bomb. And it's just their logo and it's just Tiny Bomb. It's not the full color scheme of Temple Run. It's just one little, and it says Wiseacre Tiny Bomb. So everyone now is walking around in the stadium with a 24-ounce printed can that looks like a keg with the oak barrel and the damn rings and all, but you got to get close to be able to see what the brand is, right?
Yeah.
You got to get, right? So it promotes conversation amongst the folks walking in the stadium because they're going, oh, he's drinking a hand keg. What's in his hand keg? And then they come over and they're like, oh, it's Wiseacre. And he's like, oh, well, I've got Lucky 19 or I've got whatever, right? And so it's great to promote like the suspense within the stadium. It gives smaller producers the opportunity to play amongst the greats inside stadiums, and it helps tremendously with the can printers because the only thing that they have to change in the stamp for the majority of the graphic is that one tiny little logo. And honestly, you could even print all the cans and stick that on afterwards.
Yeah, it's just a sticker.
Yeah, and you just collect, the Wiseacre is responsible for the sticker. They place it on it, and that's how it's shipped out. And so all the cans are printed the same. People save money along the way, but they're all craft hand kegs. People collect them, huh? So you can say I've gotten every craft hand keg throughout the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo for 2023. How many hand kegs did they have this year? Oh, we had 25 unique vendors with hand kegs inside the stadium. I got all 25.
Listen, I would mount. I would display them. I would display them behind
Yeah.
me for the podcast.
So you can tell whatever Oats Overnight came up with to go suck it. All right. Craft hand kegs is where it's at.
Dude, they're just overnights is just catching strays for no reason. It's a
Listen,
it's a beer
there's gonna
podcast, man. It's not
listen,
an
bro,
oatmeal podcast.
there's gonna be collateral damage, and if I know the hard hitters over there, this is me giving them credit. They have created a phenomenal brand for something that's probably a great product. I'm just teasing. It's a great product, and they are killing it because they are popping up everywhere.
Oh
So
yeah.
if I'm throwing this volume of shade, there's a group of guys that are gonna listen in a room and go, "Oh, we're gonna get him." You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
their mentality. Their mentality is not, "Oh my God, he's slandering our brand." Immediately, they're going, "Ha ha." Well,
Okay,
do I
guy.
have something for him? Craft hand kegs are trash. You know?
Yeah. Right. But if they talk about it, then it is what it is. Hey, also, alternatively, if maybe a brewery just wants to work with us and make a beer and call it the hand keg,
Hand keg.
you know, from
It's
Off the Tap
crafty.
podcast,
It's crafty. It's handy. It's keg-ish.
something like that. We might have to work on the slogan a little bit, but
Yeah, that
we'll
sounds
get
perfect
there.
to me. Oats overnight fucking worked. All right.
Well, that's the name. That's not the slogan. But
Yeah,
that's okay.
really, it's all the same. It's one and the same, honestly, because it's great branding. Damn it.
It could be. It could be. All right. Well, I do think that it's time to get down to these ratings that we got
Oh,
for
we got
this
a
thing.
WWYBD first.
Oh yeah, man. I forget it like once every other week. I always forget. Yeah,
Yeah.
WWYBD. I am gonna let you go first because
By the by the way,
I think I
you
still
said
need to look at mine.
I forget it like once a week. We only
No,
record once a
once
week.
I said once every other week.
Oh, I'm sorry if I'd have had
That's
my
whatever.
oats overnight.
Should have had a notes
Um,
overnight.
makes the brain sharp. The kidneys get to pumping.
Yeah.
So WWYBD. Um, on the real, I think I see myself. I'm gonna take one more sip. Okay. This for me is a beer that I'm not going to say like, this for me is a beer where if I went to a place like a bar or, we have a lot of like, they're usually more breweries, but a lot of like craft and tap houses and stuff have it now. If I'm going somewhere to throw, um, cornhole or maybe play some golden tea or, um, stand outside in like a pea gravel area or like a crushed rock area where there's like limited shrubbery, talk about playing washers because it'd be a good environment to do that in. This is the beer I'm drinking.
Hands on the
This is it.
hips. Man, they should really put some horseshoes out here, huh?
Yeah, is it too tough to have like a hoop we could ball around with out here? Something like that. And again, but not at my house. I'm not doing that with this beer at my house. I'm not doing this at a buddy's house with this beer. This is strictly a that unit. I'm not gonna say unicorn because they're becoming more common, but that anomaly of a bar where they're like, "Hey, we got the yard games for you. We got the ladder golf. We got the cornhole. We got the washers. We got the horseshoes. We got the whatever else you want to play outdoors. We got a golden tee inside because if it's raining, we still need to generate volume of people. I would pick this and maybe specifically this to drink because it's flavorful enough. You can do a lot and you can still have like recreational games. And you're not going to get worn down too quick.
Okay.
Take
I
that left field. Take that left field. Falls in
yeah.
your court.
Yeah, I think you got a lot more specific than I'm gonna get this week. So that's a little bit different. I'm not specific at all. I think for me, this is a couch beer.
Really?
I think I'm sitting and not like a watching sports beer, even more like a watching a movie beer.
Okay.
I'm just throwing down a couple, depending on the length of the movie, a couple to 2 to 4 beers. I'm just enjoying it. I think it's a good sipper, a good chill beer. You can throw them down hard, but I would just be chilling. That's really it. I can't get too specific with this one. When I took a sip, I didn't see myself doing anything in particular. I just saw me sitting and chilling. So that's where I'm gonna have to go with it this week.
Okay.
Really, it's a really lackluster one from me this week, but I mean that's nothing to do with the like I said. I really enjoy the beer. It's just I didn't see myself anywhere specific.
Well, then you're staying true to character because I was expecting something completely elaborate, and because it wasn't elaborate, it caught me off guard. I was like, so
Hey,
just like socks on the couch kind of thing. Yeah.
I don't even think I'm wearing socks, man. I'm not a big socks guy. My feet get too hot.
Yeah, anybody who's wearing socks like undercovers is a serial killer, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, you're gonna kick them off anyways.
They also probably eat oats overnight.
Yeah. Okay, dude. All
Dude.
right. Okay, we gotta
Okay.
get it. We gotta get to the ratings before I get
Okay.
freaking. All right. I'll go first on the ratings. I want to just preface it again and say it's a good beer, but my ratings are based off the fact that it's a pilsner. Says it's a pilsner.
Yeah.
So this is my expectations. How my expectations were different than what I received. Um, And honestly, some of these numbers could probably drop still a little bit based on those expectations. But at entry, I had it at a 3. It's just not the same as a Pilsner. Aftertaste, I also had it at a 3. I almost went a little bit lower on that because it's a little bit of a fruity aftertaste, and I just don't usually get that from a Pilsner too much. Body, also a 3. Um, Again, the honey and stuff that's in it is just not the flavor that I'm expecting in a Pilsner. Color, I have it at a 5. I mean, when you poured it, it looked good. It looked about right. It was maybe a little darker than normal, but looked solid. Bitterness, it's a little higher than a Pilsner should be, so I have that as a 3 also. Acidity, also a 3, because it's a little too fruity again. Fizz, I had it at a 4. Again, I'd eaten dinner a little bit before this, so burps were just that could have affected my burps and whatnot, but um, the burps I did get weren't bad, but they just weren't fruitful. They weren't. There wasn't a lot of them. So my total score on this is a 24. Again, good beer, tastes great. I enjoy it. I would buy it again, but it's not a Pilsner in my eyes.
I'm trying to do my total up, but I feel you on the Pilsner front. I felt that from the very beginning. Again, I think it's enjoyable. I'll do it again. We have very similar remarks, even though my scoring might have been slightly lower. I did increase one score, or actually two, from my original markings. But so entry, I have a 3. Again, this is based on the pathway that I was led down, understanding from the cam. But entry 3 could have been way more Pilsnery. So middle of the road. Aftertaste 2, because it does diminish pretty quickly. Body, I also have a 3. Again, I think it could have been a little crisper, a little fuller flavored and lighter. Anyway, color, I also have a 3. I think it could have been slightly darker. I mean, I think it's great for like a craftiness. Actually, you know what? I'll give that a 4. Bitterness, I had a 2. Again, could have had more bite, a little more like tingy, skunky hoppiness. Acidity, again, falls in line with bitterness there at a 2. Fizz, I did have it at a 2. Initially, I had it at like a 4. But as a few more beers went in, I was like, oh man, they're going to hit me. Never came.
Yeah,
So,
they kind of
gave
died
it a
out a
2.
little bit.
Um,
Well, I'll leave mine as is because my palate's a little probably messed up from my eating, but yeah, I'll leave my fizz at a 4. I was gonna knock it down a little bit.
so my total comes in at an 18.
Okay.
Again, judging this as an American Pilsner, it comes in at an
Right.
18.
That's
The
what.
beer itself, I just said it's my go-to when I go to oddball unicorn bars. If I can
Yes,
find it there, I'm drinking it there.
absolutely. Again, that's what our scale is always based on what we expect based on the style of beer and
Hmm.
how it performs to that style. So that's the only reason the numbers are really low. If I had to give it like a 9 out of 10, I mean a 10 out of 10, I would probably give it like a 8, 7 or 8 low minimum. I think it's a really solid beer, very drinkable. And again, I would buy it again. I would if I see it anywhere at a bar, like you said, I'd get it 100%.
Also, too, as like another caveat, like this is a whole different category, and we don't have to discuss it today, but a whole different category is like we do this every week, right? And so we're either splitting sixers or we each have a six or whatever. Like we have a couple, and we're only consuming so many per week, right? There are certain beers where after I'm done with what we communicate to everyone via podcast, they end up dying in my refrigerator, right? Because I'm just not going to go back to them. This is
Yeah.
definitely not one of them. Again, this isn't even remotely close to that, but like
Yeah.
just everybody plant that seed in the back of your mind for when we come across one of those in the next in the future, and I'm going to be like, this one's going to fridge sit and cemetery fridge for a hot minute.
Yeah. It's maybe not a grading a grading point, but it's a talking point for each beer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's that point in the podcast. I'm going to go tell you to follow us on social media on Twitter and TikTok at Off the Tap Pod. and on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Off the Tap Podcast.
In a new term of events, I've written a small poem to kind of close out the episode here. So hope you enjoy. No need for mead to move mountains or oats to sit overnight. One tiny bomb full of fizz makes couch sitting just right. OTT.